Hello there, you're watching World News Program with me, Mariam Zian. To the headlines. Backed by 34 countries, Algeria secures a 3-year seat at the African Union Peace and Security Council in elections held in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Meanwhile, the Algerian Foreign Ministry denounces the arrest of a consular employee by French authorities as a violation of diplomatic norms. Coming up next, martyrs and wounded as Israeli airstrikes continue pounding Gaza, with Hamas calling for a global mobilization campaign, declaring April 18 to 20th as days of global rage against Israeli occupation and international silence. And as the war in Sudan enters its 3rd year, hopes for a political resolution remain stalled, and Sudan vows to ensure dignified return of refugees, explores river, land, and transport options. Hello there and welcome back to your nightly news. First, in our file, Algeria rightfully secured a seat on the African Union's Peace and Security Council for a 3-year term following elections held in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. The vote took place as part of the 24th extraordinary session of the AU Executive Council. Algeria decisively won the vote in the 3rd round of the elections, receiving the confidence of 34 African countries. Libya obtained 15 votes, while Morocco withdrew from the race. The Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Affairs Ahmed Attaf took part in the opening ceremony of the 24th extraordinary session of the AU Executive Council in Addis Ababa. According to a statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry, the session's agenda included several items related to completing elections for vacant seats and positions within the AU's various organs. The statement added that Minister Attaf held side meetings with several of his African counterparts, during which they exchanged views on key issues facing the continent. And a new diplomatic milestone for Algeria on the African stage. With strong continental backing, Algeria secures a key seat at the African Union's Peace and Security Council, reinforcing its growing role as a driver of stability in African-led solutions across the continent. Marwa Belawar tells you more.
Algeria is stepping up its leadership on the African continent, securing a seat on the African Union's Peace and Security Council, one of the organization's most critical decision-making bodies. The move follows the appointment of Ambassador Leila Zarrougi Haddadi as Deputy Chair of the AU Commission. Winning the North African seat with the backing of 34 countries, more than 2/3 of the vote, Algeria's election is seen as a strong show of confidence in its commitment to advancing peace and stability across Africa. This latest milestone builds on Algeria's broader diplomatic push, including its current non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. The country is now positioning itself as a key voice for African priorities on the global stage, grounded in a vision of regional solidarity and homegrown solutions. Algeria has made it clear it won't sit on the sidelines, from organizing the high-level seminar on peace and security, now known as the Iran process, to leading dialogue across conflict zones. Algeria has worked to create a platform where African nations can chart their own path toward peace. Speaking from the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, Algerian officials emphasized that this approach isn't about temporary influence or outside agendas. It's about continuity in Algeria's long-standing commitment to diplomacy, conflict resolution, and African unity led by Africans for Africans.
Algeria's Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of the national community abroad, Sofiane Chaïb, said the arrest of the Algerian consular employee by French authorities under the pretext that his mobile phone was linked to an address near the residence of a wanted individual, was a flimsy excuse aimed at undermining Algerian-French relations, which had only just begun to normalize. Hossam Berkan has the report.
It seems the French far right is exhausting all means to sabotage efforts toward normalizing Algerian-French relations. With few cards left, they've now turned to targeting diplomatic and consular missions, reigniting tensions, just as the relationship was entering a phase of calm. These actions violate diplomatic norms and bilateral agreements between Algiers and Paris.
This case has been used to obstruct bilateral relations at a time when they were undergoing a phase of détente. The procedures followed and the investigations launched by agencies under the authority of French Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau, who bears responsibility for this new development, raise serious questions, especially given the exceptional timing.
Just days ago, President Tebboune and Macron expressed a shared desire to revive balanced dialogue. Algeria had even welcomed the French envoy, seemingly closing a dark chapter in bilateral ties, but others were watching, waiting for a chance to strike, with a politically motivated case against the consular official masked as a legal matter.
The consular employee was arrested in a public area, in full view of the public. French authorities failed to notify us officially through any diplomatic channel about the arrest. This violates the privileges and immunities granted to diplomatic personnel under international conventions and bilateral agreements. The reasons cited for the arrest were baseless.
This overstep, led by far-right factions and Interior Minister Retailleau, gives Algeria the right to respond and apply reciprocity in case of any violation against its diplomatic missions.
We clearly condemned this arrest in our statement as it disregards the employee's consular status and breaches bilateral agreements. We demanded his immediate release.
It is now evident that the French far right has infiltrated decision-making institutions, holding Algerian-French ties hostage to reckless actions that defy international and diplomatic norms.
And Algeria's Economic Renewal Council announced Tuesday the cancellation of its planned visit to France and its meeting with French employers group MEDEF. In the statement, the council cited pressure reportedly exerted by French authorities on a shipping executive to halt plans for an investment project in Algeria. It described the move as contradictory to official French calls for de-escalation and improved bilateral relations.
The decision to cancel the planned visit to France and the scheduled meeting with the French employers organization MEDEF came as a result of the action taken by French authorities, which directed the manager of a French maritime transport company to cancel their trip to Algeria for the implementation of an investment project. The cancellation of the visit by the French manager, prompted by French authorities citing the ongoing crisis between the two countries, stands in stark contrast to the official statements calling for de-escalation and the return of Algerian-French relations to normalcy.
Algeria's Economic Renewal Council also cancelled its planned visit to Paris and meeting with MEDEF, citing French actions that undermine investment initiatives and contradict official calls for de-escalation. Let's take a listen.
The contradiction in the French authorities' stance is evident in their concern over the limited participation of French companies in international tenders in Algeria and their actions to obstruct private investment initiatives. Given this inconsistent situation and the negative signals towards Algerian economic actors, proceeding with a scheduled visit to France and a meeting with MEDEF would be futile. The Council reiterates its commitment to international partnerships based on the principle of reciprocity, transparency, mutual respect, and the defense of the interests of the Algerian economy and its stakeholders.
In developments in occupied Palestine, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza announced on Tuesday that 17 Palestinians were killed and 69 others injured and transferred to Gaza hospitals in the past 24 hours. In a statement, the ministry reported that the death toll since the resumption of the aggression on the Strip has risen to 1,630 martyrs and 3,834 injured. It also noted that the total death toll of the Zionist aggression on Gaza since October 7, 2023 has reached 51,000 martyrs and 116,343 wounded. The Hamas movement stated that its leadership is seriously nationally reviewing the proposal received from mediators and will provide a response as soon as consultations are completed. In its statement, Hamas reiterated its firm position that any agreement must ensure a permanent ceasefire and the full withdrawal of the occupation, stressing the necessity of reaching a genuine deal, initiating reconstruction of what the occupation destroyed, and lifting the blockade on the Gaza Strip. And Hamas also launched an urgent appeal for global solidarity under the banner "Gaza is calling you," urging the Arab and Islamic worlds and all people of conscience to actively participate in a global week of action to denounce Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza. It designated April 18 to 20th as Days of Global Rage against the occupation, U.S. support for Israel, and the silence of the international community.
We urge that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, April 18th to 20, be designated as Global Days of Rage against the occupation and as a rejection of U.S. support and international complicity. We in Hamas value and support the global grassroots and union-led calls for action, and we encourage widespread participation in making Tuesday, April 22, a global day of student and labor strike across universities, educational institutions, and unions worldwide in solidarity with Gaza and its besieged population.
And a large demonstration took place in Italy denouncing the ongoing genocide waged by the Zionist occupation on the Gaza Strip for over a year and a half. According to media outlets, hundreds of Italians participated in the protest in solidarity with Gaza, demanding an end to the genocide and chanting slogans condemning the massacres committed by the occupation against Palestinian families in the Gaza Strip. The Zionist occupation launched a series of airstrikes targeting civilians in villages and towns across southern Lebanon. According to Lebanon's national news agency, Zionist warplanes targeted a civilian car at the Samakhia junction in the town of Aitarun in Bint Jbayil district with 3 guided missiles. The agency added that the occupation forces were also conducting sweeping operations with machine guns toward the town while simultaneously firing flares over the border villages adjacent to the Blue Line in the districts of Tyre and Bint Jbayil in southern Lebanon. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights expressed concern over the protection of civilians in Lebanon as fatalities continue to mount due to Israeli military operations since the ceasefire. A spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office, Tamin El-Khaitan, said at a press conference in Geneva on Tuesday that Israeli military operations in Lebanon are causing civilian deaths and injuries and destroying civilian infrastructure, raising serious concerns about civilian safety. And American warplanes launched airstrikes targeting several areas in the Jawf province in northern Yemen and Ma'rab in central Yemen. According to Yemeni media outlets, the U.S. strikes hit Al-Jaf and Al-Qadir in Al-Jawf as well as a district in Ma'rab. The Houthis confirmed that 15 U.S. airstrikes targeted the Raghwan and Madghal districts in Ma'rab as well. In Sudan, 7 Yemenis, were killed and others injured as a result of U.S. airstrike targeting the outskirts of Sana'a. Local media reported that the death toll from the U.S. strikes has risen to 7, including children, and that more than 30 others were injured. The reports added that U.S. aircraft carried out 20 airstrikes targeting sites across several Yemeni provinces, including Al-Hudaydah, Jawf, and Ma'rab. Now to Sudan, the United Nations has called for transparent investigations into the violations in Sudan and the urgent delivery of humanitarian aid to the Darfur region, along with the protection of humanitarian workers. In a statement on Tuesday, the UN said that the only solution to the crisis in the country is to stop the war, stressing that Sudan is currently facing the world's largest humanitarian crisis. It also highlighted the major challenges facing humanitarian organizations in delivering services, as several areas in Khartoum are suffering from dire conditions due to the war. The Sudanese government affirmed that all necessary measures are being taken to facilitate the return of refugees and to ensure a dignified environment at border crossings that preserves the dignity of Sudanese citizens. Sudanese Minister of Culture and Information, an official government spokesperson, Khalid Al-Aysar, stated during the first meeting on return arrangements that the discussion included medical and health preparations at the border and the provision services. The meeting also explored the use of river transport in addition to land and air transport for returning citizens.
This meeting thoroughly discussed the role the government can play in managing the movement of its citizens returning from Sudan and in preparing the necessary conditions at the border crossings to ensure the dignity of families, children, men and women. The meeting also addressed how security agencies can coordinate to provide protection at the crossings, ease congestion, and facilitate the return of citizens to their respective states.
The Algerian Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lounes Magraman, met Tuesday in the Slovak capital, Bratislava, with Slovak State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Marek Eštok, to discuss bilateral relations and ways to strengthen them. The talks were part of the second session of the Algerian-Slovak political consultations, co-chaired by Magraman and Eštok. The discussions also focused on completing procedures for opening an Algerian embassy in Bratislava and a Slovak embassy in Algiers, as well as boosting cooperation in several sectors. The same source added that the consultations provided an opportunity to exchange views on regional and international issues of shared concern. Algerian Minister of Industry called for boosted investment efforts to better reflect the strategic partnership established in 2014 between Algeria and China. The minister noted that despite a trade volume of $12.5 billion in 2024, the current figures do not match the depth of bilateral relations.
بعد التوقيع على إعلان الشراكة الاستراتيجية الشاملة سنة 2014.
Following the signing of the 2014 Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, Algeria has become China's largest market in North Africa. The volume of trade exchanges between Algeria and China reached in 2014 $12.5 billion, 10.5 of which are imports and $2 billion are exports. This doesn't reflect what Algeria aspires to as gradual balance.
And for his part, the president of the Algerian Economic Renewal Council, CREA, Kamel Moula, Algeria and China maintain strong political and economic ties with growing focus on strategic investment. The Algerian business climate is improving due to recent reforms, removing barriers and boosting thousands of new projects.
At this economic forum, our goal is to identify promising new sectors for cooperation and, above all, to strengthen the ties between economic players on both sides. Today, we have a genuine collective ability to achieve shared success, and this capacity can be deepened and expanded even further. The business climate in Algeria is experiencing real and sustained improvement, driven by the strong political will of our highest authorities and the wide-ranging reforms introduced by the government. The government's action plan has focused on removing the barriers that were hindering business and investment, whether related to procedures, timelines, or costs.
Meanwhile, the Chinese ambassador to Algiers, Mr. Dong Wanli, emphasized that Algeria and China launched a $2 billion investment program covering several sectors, including manufacturing, agriculture, and household appliances. The initiative, supported by China's National Development and Reform Commission, includes clearly or nearly 60 Chinese and over 100 Algerian companies.
With an amount exceeding $2 billion, which relates to the sectors of manufacturing, agriculture, household appliances, and so on and so forth, it can be said without exaggeration that Algeria is a very attractive destination for Chinese investors. We usually say that a true friend is someone with whom one can share the journey. On the path of common development, China and Algeria are sincere friends and reliable and natural partners.
Saïd al-Bashir, head of the Central Cybercrime Combat Department in Algeria, confirmed that the Algerian police adopted a comprehensive approach to dismantle human trafficking networks, irregular crimes, and human trafficking activities. During the International Scientific Forum on Migration, he highlighted that effective coordination between the cybercrime, human trafficking, and protection teams lead to significant results in the field.
Participation in this scientific forum is part of the ongoing efforts by public authorities to combat all forms of crime. Tackling human trafficking and smuggling requires strong coordination between cybercrime units, anti-trafficking teams, financial crime divisions, and units for protecting vulnerable individuals. This joint work has led to a clear vision and timely interventions that help dismantle several criminal networks, yielding positive results in the field.
And the UN Regional Office for Drugs and Crime in the Middle East and North Africa announced support for a regional project to combat human trafficking and migrant smuggling in Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt. And Sadiq bin Rajab, the director of the UN Regional Office, highlighted during the second day of the International Migration Forum that the office is working to strengthen cooperation with law enforcement officials in countries tackling migration crimes.
The UN Office on Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, runs global, regional and national projects. In North Africa, we'll lead a regional initiative to dismantle migrant smuggling and human trafficking networks involving Algeria, Tunisia, Libya and Egypt. Algeria gives this issue high priority, recognizing the link between trafficking and smuggling. Our office in Algeria works closely with national authorities. Last year, for example, we coordinated a week-long visit of the Algerian Anti-Trafficking Committee to Tunisia with field visits and meetings organized by our Tunis office.
The Popular Front for the Liberation of Ceuta al-Hamra and Rio de Oro Polisario affirmed that members of the UN Security Council thwarted attempts by the Moroccan occupation and its allies to bypass international legitimacy regarding the Sahrawi issue. The Polisario representative to the UN and coordinator with the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, Sidi Mohammed Ammar, stated that members of the UN Security Council delivered a strong and clear response to the representatives of Morocco, the United States, and France during a closed consultation session on Monday. In the press statement to Algeria International TV, he noted that the Council members reaffirmed the continued inclusion of the Sahrawi issue on the Council's agenda and the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and independence, contrary to what is being promoted by Moroccan occupation.
I shall now make a statement.
And Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, said on Tuesday he was neither overly optimistic nor overly pessimistic about the ongoing talks with the United States in his first public comments on Saturday's negotiations between Tehran and Washington held in Oman. Speaking during a meeting with Iranian officials, Khamenei said that the talks has been so far conducted well. On April 12, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff in Oman for talks described by Tehran as indirect. Both sides called the negotiations constructive, with the second round set to take place in Muscat on April 19. And to end on a lighter note, in football, the USM Alger has qualified for the finals of the Algerian Football Cup after beating USM Harraj 1-0 at the 5th of July Stadium in Algiers. In parallel, the title holder Shabab El-Wizdad has won Mouloudiyat Al-Bayad with the same score, 1-0 at the Mouloud Hatfi Stadium in Oran, qualifying for the third finals in a row. It's also worth noting that USM Alger will play CR Belwizdad for the finals of the Algerian Football Cup. Ladies and gentlemen, our program has come to an end. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.